have percentages, mathematical equations to derive whether this is a solid support and resistance. But sometimes you use a bit of intuition. Obviously, your technical analysis is fundamentally the most important part, and also you include a bit of fundamental analysis in there as well, right? By looking at whether the market is close to a support area or resistance area on the daily time frame, close to a major news event, right? So like what we had in terms of the interest rate on the euro, okay, that was a sort of like a trigger for the markets to move, because I will have been short on the euro, but the market hasn't been moving all that much. But as soon as the news came out, I mean, it was sort of like a trigger for the market to then start to move. Okay. Right. I think I forgot to put everyone else on mute. Let me do that now. Okay. All right. So I think I should be the only person who is audible now. Yeah, I think everyone should be on mute now. All right. So as I was saying, on Tuesday, we actually looked at what are the key important things and how do we then take advantage of those markets. But now, what do we then look at in terms of exiting, right? Because we have identified and we are aware that the support and resistance levels can be a great indicator for us to actually get into a market, but they can also help us in staying out of potential markets that are close to a significant level. So you don't want to be a buyer at a major support structures. For example, let me describe my drawing tool. Okay, if we look here, you don't necessarily want to be a buyer at this area. So at this 77,930 area, you don't want to be a buyer, because you can see that that is a resistance level on the daily time frame. If we go back, we might see previous taps on that 7790 zone, and therefore it does make sense to sort of like theorize that if the market goes back up to that level again, we could have a potential pullback. Now, rather, we'd like to wait for the breakout on the upside, for example. Okay, let me just grab my tool again. So we might rather wait for the upside, retest, and then move in, let's say, upward trajectory. Okay, I think we did look at an example of, was it EuroCAD, if I'm not mistaken? EuroCAD, but one of the markets that we did look at are actually behaving in the way that we had hoped. But that is one of the ways then we can take that support and resistance level, okay, on the daily time frame, on the 4-hour time frame, okay, because those are the time frames that you want to be looking at particularly, because once you get too stuck into the smaller time frames, you sort of like lose the big picture in terms of analysis. Right? So anytime you want to do analysis, as I said earlier, I think a few guys went around when I said that, 3 time frames, okay, that you're going to use. You either use your daily, you can use your daily, your 4-hour, and your 1 hour or 30 minutes, for example, for your entries. Or you can go, let's say, weekly, daily, and you can use your H1 or your 30-minute for your entries. Okay, but for me, it's not really necessary for me to focus on the smaller time frames because of the time horizon that I actually look at. So if I want to be swing trading and I want to hold positions for the next 3 to 5 days, I mean, the 1 hour time frame doesn't really produce that much for me. So the 4 hour is much better for that. Okay, the 5 minutes certainly isn't going to make any difference for me unless I'm scalping or short-term trading, as you call it. Okay, so if you're looking at 10 pips, 5 pips, 3 pips, that sort of thing, then the smaller time frames would be much more relevant. Okay, we'll look at that at a later stage, but that's a bit of a side note, but it's very important one. Okay, now if we look at this GBP CAD daily as an example, we can see that the market moved and pushed above that 72.24 zone, right? So 172.24, this is a previous support structure. How do we know this? Okay, we have previous rejection, okay, market pulled back, market finally did break out and pull back in. This is what we said we'd like to see it from the market, not just this close, okay? So this close, I mean, if you took this close this time, you probably would have made money, okay? But there are situations most of the time, right, probably about 60% of the time, 70% of the time, you're probably going to be wrong if you just take the breakout without waiting for the retest or the rejection candle to confirm that buy for you. Okay. In this instance, the market came back down to these lows, right? Tag that 69.12 zone. I mean, if you're looking at 69.12, it doesn't look like we've had a lot of previous action, but certainly at that 72.24 zone, we've seen this, right? We've seen the market react as a support at that level and again as resistance. So this is a significant level. Okay, now you can see the market that actually closed above with the candle, okay, above that 72.24 zone, and is sort of like pulling back to the downside now. Now, if you're looking at that right now, you can see that there's a potential for the market to pull back down, right? It's very easy to spot that the market could potentially pull back down, which is why we'd like a clean break, above a retest identical or similar to this rather, okay, because it's not going to be exactly identical. And then that push to the upside will produce for us. Okay, you can't hear anything. All right, for those who can't see, just log in and log out and then log back in rather. Okay, but just type Y if you can hear me, just type Y or yes if you can hear me. If you can't, obviously you can't say anything, but if you can hear me, just type Y. Okay, so this then represents to us a confirmation, right? A bounce off that previous support structure or resistance, previous resistance, now current support if the market was here. And that represents to us a rejection of that price level. Okay, now we are interested. It looks like something is developing. Therefore, we will then start to, go about our daily business in checking down whether it is a high probability setup or not. Okay. Now, if it does pull back into the downside, right? If the market does pull back down and heads up to that 69.12 zone, okay, if we're looking at a breakout in the sense that we have been discussing for the past 2 days, we'd have to see the market do the exact same thing, but in the opposite direction, breaking lower, coming back in to tag that 67 or 69.12 rather. I think the Euro USD did this quite perfectly today. It has been sort of like bouncing for the past 2 or 3 days, but it actually started moving today to the downside. Okay. So the rejection candle is usually very easy to spot with a bit of weakness. Okay, and I just came up with that right now. A bit of weakness on the downside, sort of like this candle over here, but this is a pin bar. I'm not quite sure of the other names that people would usually call it, but I just call it a pin bar because it's got a bit of weakness on the downside. Okay, for the guys who can't hear me, it seems like you guys will have to catch the recording because on my end, I mean, everything is working perfect. So one or two guys can still hear me, which means the audio definitely is not from my end. Okay, I might try and speak up a bit so you guys can hear me better, but it does seem like it's coming from your end. So I'll type through a message for everyone in the Telegram channel for the guys who can't hear me now, just or can't hear me at all, or either can't hear me clearly. Then you can just wait for the recording. Okay, it's good now. All right. So as I was saying, then, yeah, I'll do my best to speak up. Okay, with the retest of this level, because when the market reaches a certain price level, right, especially if it's a previous support or resistance level, you're not quite sure whether the orders are predominantly long or predominantly short. Okay. There's no way for us to tell as a retail trader or whether the smart money or commercial money is actually net long or net short or whatever the case may be at that price level. Okay. So the only thing that we can do is to wait for the market to actually show us by either breaking a previous support structure or rebounding and rejecting off that support structure, and then from that point we can make a more discerning decision about whether we should stay out of the market or get into the market. So if you were a bit hasty, especially for this one, right? If you were a bit hasty on this one, there is a possibility that the market could pull back in. Right? This is a full candle. Okay. Right. This is a huge candle. And it closed above that support structure. Now, a close alone is not significant enough to let us know that this is a high probability setup. Okay, that's not a proper breakout to me, that is. I need a bit more than that because a lot of false breakouts do have instances where the candle closes above a resistance level or below a support level, and then it pulls back in, or it moves back in. Like I've been telling you in the previous session, that false breakouts are more prominent right now than ever. Okay, there's a lot of talk about why they are so. Some blame it on system trading. Some blame it just on an influx of traders in general, and people trying to trend trade. So everyone is trying to use more or less the same strategies, which is why you have these false sort of breakouts. But whatever the case may be, they do occur. Okay, you can't deny them. You can't wish them away. And it's always important to wait for the setup to complete. Okay, now, if then we get a close below this area over here, so let's say at 72.22, we get a close rebounding back off that resistance level, okay, then we sort of like have an idea that this probably was a false breakout point, and at which point we start to look at this as a short opportunity and then take it through the proper verification, as we call it. Okay, verification, or just a check down where we look at, does the trade setup have this? Does it have that? So give it 5. There's 5 criteria that we take it through. Okay, and if it passes all 5, then it's a very high probability setup. If it passes 3, then I mean, sort of like on the fence. But 4 is reasonable enough for you to be confident that the trade itself, if you take it over time, will generate profit. Okay, because that's what we're looking at. We're looking at making profits over time, not just today, not just right now. We're looking at consistency over time, which then we need a consistent pattern, which will then produce those sort of returns. Okay, it's no use trading this system today and then trading another one tomorrow, because that's going to bring about inconsistent results. So after this pulls back down here, right, as it seems like it's doing so, then, I mean, we have to be thinking to ourselves, right? Because a lot of the times you have to sort of like not rely as much on just the technical analysis side of things, but look at things from a perspective of, let's say, commercial interest, retail interest, right? So you're looking at what other people would possibly be thinking around the same, while they're looking at the same actual setup as you. Okay. So it's always an interesting thing to do, especially if you are trading markets that you are familiar with. Then you look at how they behave around certain key levels, and how then you tie that in with your technical analysis, because that also, well, technical analysis, or how the chart or the candlestick pattern paint, is basically just a reflection of people buying and people selling. Okay. So if you can understand the buying and the selling behind the candlestick pattern, then you can make a better decision about whether to get into a market or not, without even properly using any candlestick patterns in any case. So in this instance, I mean, we can sit and watch this candle, right? But let's say by the end of the day, if it closes below the 72.24 zone, then we probably can see that, okay, there's a bit of weakness on the upside, right? Okay, it's a bit weaky. This is a previous resistance. Okay, this is a previous resistance, right? So we have, well, it is still a resistance because it hasn't broken in my eyes, right? So we have this resistance over here, and the market closed above, and it seems like it's pulling back down. Okay. So with that sort of information, we can then say, all right, I mean, there's a possibility that the market will probably move down from here, okay? But let me just take this through my normal checklist. So if then you identify, because the most important, a daily resistance is much more reliable than a 4-hour resistance, okay? Not quite sure if that makes sense. But in some cases, the 4-hour and the daily will actually tie in pretty well together. Okay. All right. Okay, it seems like we've made it to the end of the session without any further disruptions. Now, what I'll be doing is I'll upload the videos. All right, there's 3 sessions, it seems like it, today, and I'll upload them in parts. All right, so this is going to be part 3. The previous 2 sessions are going to be part 1 and part 2 respectively. And what you guys need to do is just go through them in that particular order. All the guys who couldn't hear well, right? I'm pretty sure that the audio is fine. Okay, pretty sure that the audio is fine while recording, and you will be able to re-watch the entire session. Now, signals, as I mentioned in the group, right? Just make sure that you're following them correctly and ensuring that you aren't too late, right? The PDF, you should have downloaded the PDF, and you should have gone through the PDF. You know what size you're trading. You know if you spot a trade signal that was sent through at 12:30 and you're seeing it at 1:30, whether you should take it or not. All of that information should be apparent. It should be very easy for you to know that sort of stuff. Okay. Now, when it comes to signal, right, I will be sending a link through to the Telegram channel. So you just click through on the link. If the trades that we actually posted and whatever is going on in your trading account that's linked up is not matching up, so just make sure that you follow through the link and chat with us there on the WhatsApp line, on the Telegram line, so we can make sure that everything matches up. But I mean, with everything being said, today was a pretty good day. I think we had 3 trades, right? All 3 made some money, right? And we still have 1 open. It's in a bit of a loss, but I'm pretty certain it will recover. Okay. However, we're ending off probably the week tomorrow on a very high note, because there's some pending orders that are still yet to be activated. So just look out for all of that, guys. And yeah, I will see you guys next week on Tuesday. We're going to be having our session, formerly the advanced session. I will have a sort of like a Q&A type of question and answer session on Monday, 7 p.m. Make sure you're around for that. If you have any questions, right? Just think over them during the weekend, write them down, make sure you have them ready for me. So when we're doing our session, I might extend that session. It might be an hour, it might be 30 minutes. It's all going to depend, obviously, on the amount of questions and the stuff that you guys want me to cover during that time. Okay. Now, thank you guys very much for coming through this evening, and I trust you guys will enjoy the rest of your day. And I'll see you guys on Monday. Let's have you guys a wonderful weekend. Cheers.